Atma Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Pranic Healing Podcast. On this episode, we have Shahwana. So, this is a very special episode because Shahwana is joining us from a completely separate continent in the beautiful country of Kenya. So, Shahwana's been in pranic healing for almost 20 years, and she's done a lot of amazing work planting the seeds of pranic healing in Kenya. So, I'm so honored to welcome Shahwana onto the podcast. Welcome,
Thank you. Thank
Shahwana.
you, Jason. Thank you so much for having me here. This is a
Yes,
pleasure.
no, thank you. So, it's such a great way to get introduced to so many beautiful souls across the world, teaching pranic healing because how we got introduced was through, of course, the pranic healing podcast. And I was reaching out to people for support, and you were the one of the very few that agreed to help. So I was so lucky and grateful for your support. And then once we got to know a little bit, each other a little bit better, I was just fascinated by your story. So for the audience, Shawana, please tell us, a little bit about yourself and how you got to pranic healing and how'd you end up in Kenya and doing such amazing work there now?
Thanks, Jason. It's been a very interesting journey for the past 20 years. Just for the reference and the record, I was born in Kenya. I'm the third generation. My grandparents, I think, came during the railways, when the railways were being built in Kenya. Many people are not aware what really happened, the history. There was a lot of Indians, and that day were brought from India to come and do the railways. And I think my grandparents walked into Kenya and then they stayed here. And, my mother and my father are also born in Kenya. So I happen to be a Kenyan, although um, we are considered Indians, but actually we are originally Kenyans. So that's my originality. So we've always been here. And interestingly, because we come from a generation in Africa where energy healing is not discussed openly, chakras, auras are not really part of our curriculum, as we would call it. And I never heard of pranic healing ever. I didn't even know if there's existence of energy or a teacher and masters and stuff like that. I had no clue on those stuff. And when I was introduced to pranic healing was through my some friends, and they were talking about this energy healing. And I had a son who was 15 years at that age. This is going back way 20 years ago, and he used to go through a lot of asthma episodes. And I saw one of the healers, waving their hands and healing. And I found that really weird. I'll be honest, the first time when you look at somebody waving their hands, and that sounds really weird. And I looked at them and I thought, okay, exactly what are you doing? And then they explained it. And I got a little intrigued. And then my first, introduction to pranic healing was through attending actually a basic pranic healing class, because those days it was a bit different. There was not really much of orientations and stuff. And I ended up in a class not wanting to do anything, was just to help my child. And my journey as a pranic healer was just an inquisitive one. It was just like, okay, can I help my kid with this? And then I was given a manual that is our Miracles Through Pranic Healing book. And I didn't realize the value of that until I actually started putting what I learned into action. And from day one, I went home and I wasn't interested in anything, no protocols. All I wanted was the protocol. Okay, let's look at the asthma workshop and let's try and help my kid out. And that was my whole program alignment. And I went home, I opened the book, and like many people say, if you don't practice, you don't get it. You don't really get it into it. And I'm happy to note that, and I will also encourage other pranic healers. The magic in pranic healing is frequency. The magic of pranic healing is constancy, of doing the healing on a regular basis. And I'm glad that I did that. So I just went home. I couldn't scan. So it was really a fun period when the instructor is start asking, "Can you scan the aura?" We teach auras and scanning. I couldn't feel the thing, and my whole colleagues in the class were actually feeling something, and I had to pretend that I could feel so I couldn't be left out. And I went home and opened the book, and I just followed the steps: step one, step two, step three, and it continued like that for 3 months. And I didn't give it a break, and I noticed a lot of changes. Shall I continue with this story,
Yeah,
Jason?
yeah, no,
Or
I
yeah,
just want to recap for the audience because you said so much, and just
sorry.
want to make sure the audience understands. No, no, please don't be sorry. So, it sounds like your family grew up in Kenya, specifically you being third generation. You highlight the history with the railroads and with the migration from India. I think that's such a fascinating part of history that I definitely learned about in school, but I didn't really take into account too. So thank you for sharing that, because that gives us a whole context, right? And how you're born a Kenyan and so are your parents.
Yes.
So that's a wonderful, rich history. But also, the reason that you got into pranic healing, like a lot of people, is not really for yourself. It's for others,
No,
right? And it was
it
for you.
was,
It
yeah.
was for your child with eczema. I mean, with
Yes.
asthma. Sorry,
Asthma.
asthma.
Yes.
Um, the reason why I said that is because I also had asthma too. I had both eczema
Oh.
and asthma, so I
Oh.
confuse it too sometimes. But yeah, so pranic healing for asthma, you couldn't scan, right? You were just pretending to be able to do it. But what it
In the
sounds like, because
beginning.
yeah, in the beginning, what it sounds like, and you said a magical word, frequency or constancy, right? You just have to
Yes.
keep practicing it. That reminds me of what Master Ko says, right? So Master Ko is
Yes.
a master pranic healer. He couldn't scan, he couldn't feel, but as you know, what he says, if you're able to follow simple instructions, right? If you're able to follow like a recipe, you will get the results. And that sounds like what you
Absolutely.
did for a period of 3 months. And I know you mentioned some changes, right? So changes in your son. So please, yes, please continue. Tell us about what happened, what changed,
So,
and what continued.
because my son was taking a Ventolin inhaler, and because of the side effects of that, he had a lot of huge acne growing on his face. And my first change is when I saw him and I was healing him. First of all, he used to take the inhaler almost weekly thing. We used to live in a city called Nakuru, and we have a lake there. And every time there was like a dust of the lake and the weather was a little dry, his asthma would get into a very frequent stage where he used to even take the inhaler twice a week or even more. And interestingly, we also found out that he was allergic to penicillin. So I was always, in an anxious way. I was really anxious all the time because if he had an asthma attack in school, the first thing the doctors would probably do is inject him with a penicillin. It's a very good antibiotic, but for him it was an allergy. And I used to make huge cards on his bags and say, please do not inject penicillin, allergic to penicillin. And I was going through a very interesting period in my life, emotionally, mentally, physically, relationship wise, financially. Later on in the stages, as I will speak about it, that I learned from our teacher, Grandmaster Chokoksui, when I did my psychotherapy, that asthma is not just a physical condition. Asthma is something which is also emotional. And was it really my son's emotions? He was 15 years old by the time I was healing him. I moved into this city when he was literally 2 years, but I was going through my own trauma of stress. There was a lot of stuff which was going on. And I realized that my stress was affecting my child, because when I read the lines that asthma is sometimes not physical but usually emotional in origin, this made sense to me. So I was a person who was more into a stressful mode where my child was picking the energy from me and getting affected. So for the parents out there, I would really say that it's really our emotions which affect our kids. We really need to keep our energy into a balanced stage. And I learned this through pranic psychotherapy classes when I went to do the class, and that made sense to me.
All right, great. So thank you so much, Shawana. So you mentioned about the whole progress with psychotherapy and how stress as a parent affects the child, not only the child's health, and as you mentioned, asthma, right? Even though it's a physical condition, there's a lot of origins in the emotions, and that's very important because a lot of people don't understand that. And I think a lot of people would benefit, right, if they can manage their emotions better. They can actually improve their physical symptoms, right? So, and I think that you were going to talk about the psychotherapy class and the experience from that and how things continue to improve on both sides, right, for your son and for yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. When I did my pranic psychotherapy class, it's more connectivity happened. The magic between the chakras took place, and I came to understand that the chakras are not just physical conditions which affect the human body, but they also have a psychological, a role to play. And when I went to understand the solar plexus chakra is connected to anger, frustration, irritability. And my life was in a distress at that moment of time, going through a lot of stuff with finances, relationships, and other stuff. So when I did regular healing on myself, and the meditation on twin hearts was the one of the most biggest strength I took from my condition started becoming more clear. I was more calmer. I was able to look at things with clarity. And when that happened, I also noticed my son's condition really, really changed, because when I was calmer, I saw him, getting better. And of course, the healings took a long, I would say not a long time, but I would say played a major role in his healing, because I would sit up every day in the morning. In the beginning, at least 2, 3 weeks, I would heal him every day. And I didn't have much time. It usually used to happen in the mornings. And it was all done by looking at the book and following the protocol. Remember, I was not able to really, really scan, or I didn't know that I can practice on scanning and become better. But after a month or so, automatically I could feel some energy in my hands. So I could feel the vibrations, and I could actually feel that his energy was getting better, and his acne on the face just disappeared. It was really an
Wow.
amazing, to see that there was no ointment applied. There was nothing, there was no medication used, and his face really started clearing up. He was sleeping better. He hardly had wheezing issues. And that was where my turning point was. That's where I really, really looked into the school of pranic healing and appreciated the teachings. What caught my eye was, I'm a beginner, I'm new, and this is so simple. It wasn't difficult at all. Just follow the steps.
Yeah, I love to again just emphasize that point because chronic healing is so simple, but it's just when you get the results, it almost surprises you, right? How fantastic the results are, but it seems like you didn't even do that much to equate to those results, right? And I think that what you mentioned, right, especially in chronic healing, doing the meditation on twin hearts, for people to know, is basically the standard meditation that we do. Again, very simple, but that had a very powerful effect for you. But also working, right, when you're able to heal yourself, right, as a parent, as a healer, you're able to do a lot much better healings for everyone else, right? For your friends, your family, for your especially for your children, because you become a clearer channel for that energy to pass through you, right? And I just love the success that you have with your child, right, in helping with the asthma, but also helping with the acne, and I'm sure just helping with his overall emotions as well. Because you mentioned in the beginning, right, how you weren't able to scan or feel the energy, and again for the audience that doesn't understand what scanning is basically when you feel for a person's energy using your hands, almost like a like a metal detector, right? You can feel the quality of the energy. And it sounds like for you, Shawana, you were able to feel the difference, right? Feel that his energy was getting better, which is another confirmation for us as healers, like, oh, something's improving, something's working, right? And I loved how you mentioned, again, it's just like you think that you're a beginner, right? You think that, oh, such these cases should be hard, but no, everyone can do it, everyone can work on it, and it doesn't matter your skill level. If you can follow simple instructions, the results speak to themselves. And I think that your conversation, your experience gives a lot of parents hope, right, with children with asthma, with acne, could be even eczema or allergies, whatever common childhood illnesses there are, right? As a parent, you want your child to get better. And, this modality, like you said, no ointments, no, you didn't need an inhaler, you didn't need to rely on anything, just use the energy. And the energy was able to, again, address some of the root cause of the disease and help eventually help, your child get a lot better. Is that a correct summary of everything that I said?
Absolutely, Jason, you got it all right. Yes,
Okay.
this was magic for me. I mean, people can call it magic, but for me, it was just the wow moment, when you can sleep with peace and know that your son, your child, is not having the attacks, and you're at feeling of ease, and he grew. People looked at him, and he actually shot up, he grew. His height really grew after that, and he's 6.6 feet 1 inch tall now, and people actually look
Wow.
at him, and they normally say people with asthma, because of the constriction of the lungs and stuff, the
Right.
height normally would not shoot up. But after that, his height shoot up. He actually started playing rugby, and without getting tired, he was more
Rugby.
energetic. Yeah,
Wow. That's a very
and
intense sport.
yes, he broke his
Yeah.
arm also, and that was his second case. I had to do it when he had a
Mm,
fracture on his hand, and that's where
yeah.
I was very happy to know about advanced pranic healing. And within days, the doctor normally says he has to put the plaster on for 6 weeks, and that's another story. But this is what I'm just trying to say, that we know so much. The pranic healing has so many beautiful things to offer, and Master Chokok
Yeah.
Sui has done an amazing job by doing it in a simple form. And every time I look at my books, every time I'm healing, it's like I fall in love with the protocol again, because it's so simple. And sometimes people, this is the simplicity, people doubt the teachings, or they think, oh, this is too simple. Would it really get results? And I have seen hundreds of people after that who have gotten results. And when I was offered, to become a pranic healing instructor, I jumped to it because I thought, hey, how many people can I, share this with? The excitement is just over the moon. Even till today, when I go and teach the class, when I'm facing the students, I am like, you have no clue what you're about to get. You have no clue how the transformation is going to take place for you. You have no clue how your life is about to change. There's so much excitement, I'm almost like a small child wanting to share this
Oh, I
toy,
can feel
this
that
amazing
energy.
toy.
Yeah, as you say that, I can feel that.
Right,
That's
it's,
amazing.
yeah. So that's my excitement. That's where when I share this story, I have so much love for the teachings. I have so much love for my teacher. I mean, he's transformed my life through these teachings. He's been amazing, amazing sport. I had a privilege of meeting him once, but it was just a brief, on the stage. I never really talked to him, but he's touched millions of lives through the teachings. And every time I open the book, he's there.
Yeah, that's and for the audience, Shamana's mentioning the founder of modern pranic healing, which is Grandmaster Choa Koksui, who left his body in 2007. And it's such such a special moment, right? To have that opportunity to meet the teacher, although you didn't speak to him in person. But I think what Master Choa says is the the energy of the teacher, right, is through the teachings, right? So if you follow the teachings, you are intimately embracing the teacher. You are basically, if you have any issues, especially when I'm doing healing, right? Because a lot of us, when we do healing, we might have certain doubts or like, oh, can this really work, right? When you really trust in the teachings, when you trust the protocol, you are basically invoking for the energy of the teacher, which further supports your healing. It kind of makes supercharges your healing, as Master Ko says. So and that's why it's so wonderful, because for a lot of us that didn't have the opportunity to meet the teacher in person, I think that we can get majority of that experience through just trusting the teachings and follow the teachings, right? And that's amazing. So
Like Master Cho would say. I mean,
yeah.
Jason, I think we know. He just says, follow the simple instructions.
Mhm.
And I think that's where you really get the results.
Yeah, follow simple instructions. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. I mean, and Master Choa was like the master of making something very complex into making it very simple. And it takes a smart person to talk about something complex, but it takes a genius to make something really complex and make it simple. So
Absolutely. I agree 100% with that. One thing I've
yeah,
stuck to the school of pranic healing for all these years is because there are many, many schools which offer, part of how spirituality is or healings is. One thing about pranic healing which really, 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 really gives me impact and a solid ground is Master Choa Koksui gives us the how, the whys, the hows. He gives us the techniques. We're never lost. All the answers, all the answers are just given. Any question you ask, there is always an answer. Why? It's not a blind belief that why am I cleaning this chakra, for example, if the throat, and why would I be doing certain colors when we use advanced pranic healing. He really explains it in detail, and it actually resonates and makes sense. So if I am empowered by these teachings, is because of the simplicity and the clear explanation and also the techniques. So I will emphasize its techniques. Master Chow we just don't give lectures and leave it halfway. He actually shows us what to do, when to do, and how to do it. And that's where my whole life evolves with pranic healing. Anything I do, I have to put what do I have to learn from this. We just don't have healings, we also have character building, we also have arahatic yoga, we also have other teachings part of this, which helps mold humans in many levels. So if I've stuck to the school, is because of this simple reason. I get my answers.
And I totally agree with that, Shawana. I think for the audience, you know, a lot of people see pranic healing as just a healing modality, but as you mentioned, as you get more into it, there's really a science behind it, right? There's a science, but there's a spiritual arm too, with what you mentioned with arahatic yoga, which, for my experience, is one of the reasons why I got stuck on too. Like I went very fast from all the courses right into the arahatic yoga courses, and it really was transformational because, as you said, Master Choa was not an amazing spiritual teacher, was not only an amazing spiritual teacher, he was a scientist, right? He would have the explanation, as you said, the how and the why, which for a lot of us, more logical people, right? We want to understand why, right? Not only just like, you know, just tell us the teachings, we'll follow it. Master Cho is like, always, you can listen to the teachings, but you also want to practice it. You want to experiment time. You want to get your own truth. And I think that's what's profound because Master Choa said never told us to follow it blindly. He said always to practice and use discernment and make up your own conclusion, which is something that we also teach as well. So, and I think that's just a beautiful way to transition to the final segment of our talk. Is if Shawana, if I think your story coming into pranic healing is a story that many people have, right? You want to help your child that may be suffering from asthma, maybe they have another certain condition, right? If a parent were to come up to you, right, and this parent says, "Oh, I have like my 5-year old, he's suffering from asthma, he has allergies, I've tried everything," you know, what advice would you give to that parent, and how would you give that advice to that parent? What would you say?
Thank you. We've actually had a lot of parents who come in with this kind of conditions where they want to help their children. My advice to the parents would be one thing. Yes, medicines are a good way. You can't leave medication. It's a complementary. But when energy healing comes in hand to hand, you're actually making the whole system complete. So I would encourage the parents to learn the science and art of energy healing so you can help your child. One thing I always tell them is do not be helpless. You cannot stand in a corridor of a hospital and feeling helpless. You can't do anything for your child or for other people who are suffering. You have the tools, use them. And the tools you need for pranic healing is just the hands. That's all you need actually. Once you understand how to use them, your life can be very complete. And this is an advice for the parents, this is an advice for the grandparents. I am a grandmother of 3 grandchildren, and trust me, this is the tools I use every time. If there's a phone call, my kids calling and saying the baby's not feeling well, I have a teenager granddaughter in the house, and I can know the teenage stuff which they go through because of their hormone imbalances and all that. This is where pranic healing, pranic psychotherapy actually plays a huge role. Learn how to remove the cause. The cause is stress. Sometimes it's you, sometimes it's a child going through. So don't be helpless. This is 3 words I will say. Don't be helpless. Empower yourself. Use the tools which you can to help relieve suffering of your humanity your family, yourself, and others. And as Jason would had put it, that it's a big, 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 large story. It's not just healing. We also have healings for finances. We also have healings for relationships. My second healing which came in was a huge case, which was my sister who had a second stage cancer. And I was a very new pranic healer at that time. And when I saw the results with my sister, there was no going back. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't sitting
Right.
there waiting for disaster to take place. I knew the doctors are doing their best, which they were. But what could I do? At that time, I put myself into action. And since that day, I remembered that I don't want to be helpless.
Right. Um, that's such an amazing story because I think with family that's so close to home, right? And especially to have such a severe condition like cancer, um, it just transforms your entire approach at it because it's like this is not only like you said only for your child. It could be for finances, for relationships, even more such more severe conditions. And I find that again with the pranic healing school, it is so encompassing, right? There's everything that you think you might need. Master Cho has thought of, and Master Cho has developed a tool and a system and a protocol for us. And excuse me, and I find that so it's so grateful that I feel because it's a like you don't need to look anywhere else. Everything you need to find is right here. And so, thank you so much, Shawana. I think that your talk today helps so many people, especially parents out there, um, that can help them feel empowered, right? Like you said, don't feel helpless, right? Whether you're in a situation where, you know, doctor says one thing and you feel like you're helpless in helping your child or helping your family member, your sister, brother, whoever. When you learn these tools, when you learn these techniques, you become empowered, right? You do have an opportunity to help someone, and that opportunity might come from yourself first, right? As we know, we are the foundation. We have to work on ourselves. We have to heal ourselves in order to help other people. And I think if even a small percentage of people learned that or became aware of that, I think the world would just become such a much more better place because they can help even more people.
it,
So
it
thank you
makes a
so
lot of
much.
sense. Thank you,
Yes,
Jason. Just to put one line in, it makes so much sense
sure.
when Master Chokoks he says his vision, his mission, have one pranic healer per family, and I really resonate with that because imagine if there's one pranic healer per family. I mean, you can really help a lot of people. You're not just helping yourself, but so many people can be helped. So pranic healing is a tool which is like your magic wand which you can bring it out
Right.
anytime you need it. And
Exactly.
thank you, Jason, for allowing me to be here. I really appreciate sharing these amazing stories. I have more to share, and maybe next time we'll do more, especially on finances and tithing, which is something which has really been an amazing journey for me, and I have interesting stories to share about the psychic self-defense also. So thank you,
Uh,
Jason, for having me
Oh,
on this platform
absolutely. And
all the
thank
way
you,
from
Shawana.
Kenya.
Yes, all the way from Kenya. And again, we there's so much to talk about, but not enough time to fit it all in 24 hours. But we will definitely get that covered because those are definitely interesting areas. And again, we will put that on the schedule. Okay. So thank you so much. Atma namaste everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode with Shawana, and we will see you in the next episode.